Okay, everybody, today we are going to talk about arrays, and I think we went over this briefly before. An array is an array can be used to store multiple values at the same time. They have to be the same data type, though. You can't have an integer and a float, even though they're both numbers. Everything has to be declared either an integer, a float, a double. You absolutely can't mix letters and numbers, so you can't use a character or a string with letters and numbers. Everything has to be the same data type. Every data type, I'm sorry, I already just said that. Arrays use elements starting with the element 0 to arrange their data type. So if you have 6 different items, you would have elements 0 through 5 to create 6 slots for the different variables. And arrays, basically, the main thing about arrays is they save a lot of time coding. So, before we start, I want to go through the for loop. I want to review this. We did this last week, and I just want to make sure that everybody remembers it because we use the for loop sometimes to add to an array, especially when we have very long strings of data. That way we don't have to manually code everything in. So the for loop, we have I equals 0, and so long as I is less than 5, this loop will continue to run. And this increments the value of I by 1. Remember the 2 plus signs, that's what it does, increment I by 1. So this would give you an output of, okay, as long as I is less than 4, so this should do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so it should give you a 1 through 5. Okay, a 0 through 4. Because here's what we would have to do to get what I was expecting earlier. You would have to do plus 1, and I believe, yeah, now we have 1 through 5. Because whatever the I is at that time, if it's 0, then it's 0 plus 1, which starts you out with the number 1. If it's 1, then 1 plus 2 gives you 2, so on and so forth. So that is the for loop. Hopefully it's still fresh in your minds. And let's go ahead and dive into arrays. Okay, we'll go through the PowerPoint first, and then we'll go through a project together. So we've already gone over this slide. They allow you to use multiple values of the same data type as long as the data types are the same. Okay, now here's the old way we would code. If we had, let's just say we had 6 months and we were counting calories for those months. Month 4, you didn't need anything. Basically, each month you would have to, declare it. Month 1 is a float and 100. Month 2 is a float, 220. Month 3 is a float, 300. So on and so forth. And your we don't have the output yet. This would be your output right here. You would have your total, your average, and an estimation of how many calories you took in 2 years, and that is designated right here. Your Cout is your total, and your total is all the months simply added together. Your average is the total divided by 6 months, and if you wanted to predict how many calories you would intake in 2 years, you would just take your average times 24, and so that is where we get the output from. Now, the new way of doing this, well, using an array, this right here, float, months array, these square brackets are crucial. This is what designates this as an array. So, you put how many elements you have, 6. Notice these are the same numbers that were right here. But now, instead of all this code, you just have it all in one line. Here are your indexes. So 100 is in the number 1's index. 0 index. 220 is in the 1 index. 300 is in the 2's index. 0 is 3, 200 is 4, 250 is 5. Now, let me show you something real quick, if I can find it real quick. In your text, you have to type in 406 to get to where arrays start. And then you can look through this text. I'd highly encourage you to do so. Here are your elements for an array. This is a visual that can help you understand how these numbers are being input. So if we look at our PowerPoint, 100, 220, 300, that would go 100, 220, 300. I believe the next number was 0, and then I can't remember the last 2. So that's what's going on there. We have put all those numbers into an array, and I know with 6 months it doesn't seem like that much of a help, but think about, if you had 1,000 different variables to input, it would be extremely helpful to just be able to put them in a string like this. Now, or an array like this, I should say. String's a different thing. Now your total has to be changed. Before, your total was month 1, because here's month 1. Month 1 was a float. Month 2, float. Month 3, you just added all your months up, just like so. But now, there are no months. Nothing is declared as a, there is no month 1 being declared anywhere. So what we have to do is point to the element of the array. Months array, and you say what element you want. 0. 0 is a 100. Plus months array, index number 1. Index number 1 is a 220. Plus months array number 2. Index number 2 is a 300. So hopefully you guys see what's happening there. The average is still the same. It would be the total divided by 6, because there's still 6 months, and the prediction in 2 years is still the same. Average times 24 for 24 months and 2 years. The C-outs do not change yet either. Let me see, what does it say down here? Notice that all the numbers were previously declared as floats separately are now all done in one array. Okay. Notice that instead of month 1, month 2, etc., we now point to the index of the array. That's what I mean right here, the index of the array. The total, average, and prediction does not change yet. So you're going to have the same output doing it that way, but with less code. Now, maybe you want the user to input the data. Maybe that makes sense. Instead of hard coding all your data to be calculated, you want your terminal to pop up, this being the terminal, and you want it to prompt the user to enter data. This is what you had before. This was right here. No, I'm sorry, that was right here. This is the line that's copied over. And we are going to replace that with this. Now the month array 6 stays, but this goes away, and then you would hit enter and see out. This is just to prompt them when the terminal pops up. You have months array 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but they're all CNs. So keyboard, the keyboard is your input, and it'll ask them in sequence. So let's take a look at what comes next. Okay, now this is just as bad as we were in the beginning, right? That's a lot of coding to do. So this can be put into a for loop, which will, this will become this. So basically, what happens here, when I is less than 5, so we're going to start out with I equals 0, and this is pointing to the index of 0. Then we're going to enter the amount for the element, and it is going to increase by 1. And then that is going to continue to loop until I is equal to or less than 5. So when this turns to 6, that's it. It shuts down. So you got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's how this loop is going to work. Now, if you change the I to I plus 1, like I showed you in W schools earlier, then when your output happens, you would have the number 1 instead of the number 0 here. So let me go back one. Because if you don't do that, then it'll go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 when you have 6 values, and it's just more user-friendly to start with the number 1. So, if you place your total around your loop as seen above, you will not have to manually code each element to be included in your total as seen below. So your float total, which if we go back a few, you can see right here, we really haven't messed with this yet. But if you have thousands of data entries, or even hundreds, or even 50, that's a lot of coding, to do this 50 times. So here's your answer right here. Here's the for loop that is right here. So we took this for loop and we put float total equals 0, and then after the loop runs, the total is going to equal the months array plus the previous total. So the total will increase every time this loop runs, and another value is input. It will just continue to be added to your total. So rather than adding up all the values afterwards, it's just going to do it while you're running through the loop. And like I said, here's your output now, and that's it with the PowerPoint presentation. But now what we are going to do, actually, let's make this two separate videos. I'll be right back, and we're actually going to run through this, and we're actually going to play with arrays and code blocks a little bit.